Growing up as Shirley Jackson's daughter was far from easy. Every move I made, every breath I took, was constantly monitored and judged. My father, the powerful CEO of Jackson Industries, had already mapped out my entire life before I could even walk. "Patricia, darling," he'd say, adjusting his perfectly tailored suit, "a Jackson never settles for second best." Our mansion in Glendale was a symbol of that belief. It had 29 grand rooms filled with luxury and wealth, every corner carefully designed to showcase power. But to me, it was less of a home and more of a golden cage. By the time I was 27, I had followed my father's plan perfectly. I graduated from ISE Business School, secured a junior executive role at Jackson Industries, and was engaged to Douglas Murray, the heir to Murray Technologies. Douglas wasn't just my fiancé, he was also my father's ideal choice for me. But there was a big problem. I wasn't in love with Douglas. My heart belonged to someone else entirely. I met Tyler Posey on a rainy Saturday morning when my Ferrari decided to break down on the way to work. He was the mechanic who came to my rescue, pulling up in a beat-up tow truck. His smile was warm and genuine, making my heart race in a way it never had before. "Looks like your timing belt is done for," he said, wiping his hands on his worn jeans. "I can fix it, but it'll take a few hours." Something about his honest brown eyes and the way he spoke to me, not down to me, made me agree to wait at his garage instead of calling an Uber. That simple decision changed my life forever. As I sat in the small garage, drinking bad coffee from a vending machine, I got to know Tyler. He wasn't just any mechanic. He had worked his way through engineering school and graduated at the top of his class. He could have easily landed a high-paying corporate job, but he chose to do what he loved, fixing things with his hands. "Life's too short to spend it doing something just because it looks good on paper," he said, his eyes lighting up as he spoke. Those words hit me harder than I expected. For the first time in my life, someone had put into words exactly what I had been feeling all along. Tyler saw life differently, through a lens of passion and purpose, not obligation. One cup of coffee turned into another. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into stolen moments that I never wanted to end. Tyler wasn't just fixing my car that day. He was fixing something deep within me. For the first time, I felt alive. Whenever I managed to escape my suffocating world, Tyler was my safe haven. He never asked about my family's wealth or tried to impress me with fancy dinners or expensive gifts. Instead, he introduced me to a life I never knew existed. We went on midnight drives along the coast, had simple picnics in hidden parks, and laughed until our stomachs hurt. For 7 months, I lived 2 lives. By day, I was the perfect society daughter. By night, I was just myself. But deep down, I knew this double life couldn't last forever. The turning point came during a charity gala at our mansion. Douglas was busy boring everyone with endless talk about mergers, while my mother dragged me from one group of socialites to another, like I was her prized possession. "Patricia will be taking over the East Coast operations after the wedding," she announced to yet another group. "The Murray and Jacksons together. Imagine the possibilities." Her words felt like a noose tightening around my neck. Feeling like I was about to burst, I slipped out into the garden, my hands trembling as I dialed Tyler's number. When he answered, the words came pouring out. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I can't marry Douglas. I can't keep being the person they want me to be." There was a pause before Tyler finally spoke. "Then don't be. Be who you are, Patricia. That's the person I fell in love with." His words gave me the courage I needed. The next morning, I walked into my father's study. My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to stand tall. "Daddy, I need to tell you something," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "I can't marry Douglas. I'm in love with someone else." The explosion that followed was immediate and overwhelming. My father's face turned a deep shade of purple, and his voice boomed like thunder. "A mechanic," he roared, slamming his fist onto his mahogany desk. "My daughter, a Jackson, in love with a grease monkey?" "He's an engineer, Daddy," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "And he's brilliant. If you would just meet him." "Absolutely not," my father bellowed, cutting me off. His voice was sharp enough to shatter glass. "You will marry Douglas as planned, or you can forget about your trust fund, your position at the company, everything. Is that clear?" His words hit me like a slap, but they also sparked something inside me. For the first time, I realized how tightly I had been controlled my entire life. It wasn't just about Tyler anymore. It was about choosing my own path, no matter the cost. I stood tall, finding strength I didn't know I had. "Crystal clear, Daddy. Goodbye," I said firmly. Walking out of that study was the hardest thing I'd ever done. My mother's hysterical sobbing, my father's angry threats, and the whispers of the household staff followed me as I packed a small bag. This was the only home I had ever known, but I knew I couldn't stay. When I stepped outside, Tyler was waiting for me by his modest apartment, worry written all over his face. As I explained everything that had happened, he looked troubled. "Patricia, that's your whole life you're walking away from, your family, your inheritance. I can't let you give all that up for me." I silenced him with a kiss. "I'm not giving up my life, Tyler. I'm finally starting it." The next few months were a crash course in real life. I moved into Tyler's small, one-bedroom apartment, got a job as an entry-level business consultant at a small firm, and learned how to live on a budget. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I missed the comfort and luxury I had taken for granted, but for the first time, I felt free. I wasn't living by anyone else's rules but my own. My parents didn't make it easy for me. Their attempts to bring me to my senses ranged from emotional guilt trips to outright sabotage. They froze my bank accounts, canceled all my credit cards, and even tried to get me fired from my new job. But every obstacle only made Tyler and me stronger as a team. We learned to support each other and fight for the life we were building together. When Tyler and I decided to get married, we chose to keep it simple. We planned a small ceremony in a local park. There was no designer gown, no extravagant decorations, and no society photographers. Just us and a few close friends who truly cared about us. It was everything I wanted, a day that was about love, not appearances. On the morning of the wedding, I received a text from my mother. "Your father and I will be attending. This is your last chance to fix this mistake." My heart raced as I showed the message to Tyler. He gently squeezed my hand. "It's your call, love. Whatever you want." Despite everything, I wanted them there. They were still my parents, and a part of me hoped they might finally see how happy I was. I took a deep breath and replied, "I'd like you to come." No more arguments, though, just be there. For once, I felt in control of my choices, and no matter what happened, I knew I was finally living the life I had chosen for myself. As I walked down the makeshift aisle in my simple white dress from a department store, my eyes immediately found Tyler. He stood at the end, waiting for me, his smile radiating warmth. But behind him, I noticed my parents. My father looked as if he'd bitten into something sour, while my mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Neither of them made a move to join the ceremony. Their presence felt heavy, but I focused on Tyler and the life we were beginning together. The reception was a casual barbecue in the park, surrounded by our close friends. No elaborate decorations, no high-end catering, just laughter, love, and the kind of joy money couldn't buy. My parents, however, weren't there to celebrate. They saw this as their last chance to sway me. "Patricia, darling," my mother began, her voice thick with desperation. "It's not too late. Douglas would still take you back. Think about what you're throwing away." My father, always direct, added coldly, "This is your last chance. Stay with this man, and you'll never see a penny of your inheritance. Is that what you want? A life of poverty?" I glanced at Tyler, standing nearby in his rented suit, laughing and chatting with our friends.
He was so at ease, so genuine.
Then I looked back at my parents, trapped in their rigid world of wealth and expectations. Their words didn't scare me anymore. "What I want," I said, my voice steady and clear, "is to be happy. Tyler makes me happy. If you can't understand that, then maybe we don't need your money, or you, in our lives." My father's face turned a deep shade of purple. "You're no daughter of mine," he spat, spinning on his heel. My mother hesitated for a moment, her eyes filled with regret. But in the end, she followed him. Together, they stormed off, leaving me standing there. I watched them go, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. Tyler appeared beside me, wrapping his arm around my waist. "You okay?" he asked gently. I leaned into him, feeling the solid comfort of his presence. "Never better," I said, watching my past walk away for good. That was 7 months ago. Since then, Tyler and I have built a life together, one filled with hard work and even harder love. Tyler continued running his garage while taking night classes to earn his master's degree. I threw myself into my consulting work, slowly building a client base. We were happy, truly happy, even if it meant watching our spending and clipping coupons. For the first time, life felt real. But Tyler was keeping something from me, something that would turn my world upside down once again. Everything changed on what seemed like just another ordinary Monday evening. I came home early from work, excited to surprise Tyler with takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant. But when I walked into the apartment, it was empty. On the counter, there was a hastily scribbled note. "Working late at the garage. Love you." It wasn't unusual for Tyler to work late, but something felt off. Lately, he'd been distracted, taking mysterious phone calls and working strange hours. A knot formed in my stomach as my mind wandered to dark thoughts. Was something wrong? Was I about to lose everything again? Unable to sit still, I decided to bring dinner to him at the garage. Maybe we could eat together and ease my worries. But when I arrived, the place was dark and Tyler's old truck wasn't parked in its usual spot. My hands shook as I called his number. It went straight to voicemail. Panic started to creep in, and my heart raced. Just as fear began to overwhelm me, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Posey, please come to 1868 Allen Avenue immediately. It's about your husband." My breath caught in my throat. Allen Avenue? That was in the industrial district, miles from Tyler's garage. With trembling hands, I entered the address into my GPS and drove through the dark city streets, my mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. What was going on? Why was Tyler there? The GPS led me to a massive, modern building with sleek glass walls and a professional look that didn't match Tyler's usual world. As I approached, the security gates opened automatically, and a uniformed guard greeted me. "Mrs. Posey," he said with a respectful nod, "please take the executive elevator to the top floor." Executive elevator? Top floor? My confusion grew, and my heart pounded in my chest as I stepped into the sleek elevator. When the doors opened, I found myself in a breathtaking office suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of the city, and everything around me oozed wealth and power. Then I saw him, Tyler. He stood at a glass desk with his back to me, looking out over the city. But this wasn't the Tyler I knew. Gone were the worn jeans and oil-stained t-shirts. Instead, he was wearing an impeccably tailored suit, the kind that probably cost more than our monthly rent. "Tyler," I whispered, my voice barely audible. He turned around slowly, and his familiar warm smile greeted me, though there was a hint of nervousness in his eyes. "Charlie," he said softly, using the special nickname only he called me. "I think it's time we talk." My mind raced as I stood there, staring at the man I thought I knew. Who was he, really? And what was he about to tell me? Before Tyler could say another word, the office door burst open, and there they stood, my father, mother, and Douglas Murray. It was like stepping into a nightmare. "What is the meaning of this?" my father roared, his face already turning that familiar shade of angry purple. "Security said Patricia was heading up here. What are you doing in the CEO's office?" You mechanic." Tyler didn't flinch. Instead, he calmly straightened his tie and stepped around the desk. "Actually, Mr. Jackson," he said evenly, "I am the CEO. Tyler Posey, founder and chief executive officer of Posey Innovations." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother grabbed the nearest chair to steady herself. Douglas's jaw dropped so low it looked like it might never close again. And my father, for the first time I could remember, was utterly speechless. But my mother stammered, struggling to find words. "You're a mechanic." Tyler smiled gently and took my hand. I own a chain of auto repair shops, yes. That was my first business, started with a loan from one of my college professors. But Posey Innovations is my main focus. We're a tech company that specializes in revolutionary electric vehicle batteries. Those late nights at the garage? That's what they were about. We were finalizing our newest prototype. I stared at him, my head spinning. This was a side of Tyler I never knew. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Tyler turned to me, his eyes soft and full of understanding. Because I needed to know, he said. When we met, I had just made the Forbes 50 Under 50 list. Every woman I dated before you only cared about my money or my status. But you fell in love with me when I was just a mechanic. You gave up everything to be with me. I had to be sure. Posey Innovations, my father finally muttered, his business mind catching up to the moment. The company that revolutionized electric vehicle battery technology? The one every major car manufacturer is fighting to partner with? That's you? Tyler nodded, still holding my hand. Our market valuation hit $150 billion last week. Not quite Jackson Industries territory yet, he added with a small smile, but we're getting there. The room went silent again. My mother looked like she might faint. Douglas looked completely defeated, as if the wind had been knocked out of him. My father, though, stared at Tyler with a mix of disbelief and something I never expected to see, respect. As for me, my emotions were a whirlwind. The man I fell in love with wasn't just a mechanic. He was a visionary, a leader, and a genius. But none of that mattered. The only thing I cared about was the same thing that had drawn me to him in the first place. Tyler was the man who loved me for me, and I loved him for exactly who he was. I couldn't help but laugh at my father's expression. All those months of looking down on Tyler, dismissing him as nothing more than a poor mechanic, and here he was, secretly building an empire right under their noses. Tyler's voice grew sharper as he spoke. Now, I think we should discuss how you've treated your daughter. The same daughter, by the way, who just became one of the largest shareholders in Posey Innovations when she married me. My father's face turned pale. Jackson Industries had been struggling to break into the electric vehicle market for years. A partnership with Posey Innovations would have been a game changer, and he knew it. Now see here, my father blustered, trying to regain control. We were only looking out for Patricia's best interests. By damaging hers? Tyler countered, his voice calm but firm, like steel wrapped in silk. By trying to get her fired? By making her cry herself to sleep for weeks. I finally found my voice. Daddy, you always taught me that Jacksons never settle for second best. Well, I didn't. I married the most brilliant, kind, and successful man I've ever known. And I did it without knowing about any of this. Patricia, sweetheart, my mother said, stepping forward with her arms outstretched. We were wrong.
We see that now.
Please come home. I looked around the magnificent office, then at Tyler, my wonderful husband, who had let me find my own way, supported me, and helped me grow stronger. I am home, Mom. But if you want to be part of our lives, you'll have to accept us on our terms. No more manipulation. No more control. My father looked like he was choking on something bitter and unpleasant. And what about Jackson Industries? He asked stiffly. Tyler smiled, calm, but with a hint of mischief. Well, sir, we've actually had several offers from your competitors for exclusive partnerships. But considering the family connection, we might be open to a different arrangement if you're interested in discussing it as equals. The next hour was surreal. My father and Tyler sat down to talk business, while my mother fussed over the state of our small apartment and insisted we move into a proper home. Douglas, who had been standing silently like a defeated statue, eventually slunk away, probably to lick his wounds. Later that night, back in our cozy apartment, I curled up next to Tyler on the couch. The contrast between the luxurious office and our little home didn't bother me one bit. Here, in this modest space, we had built a life together, a life of love, respect, and honesty. Tyler pulled me closer, his voice soft and full of warmth. You okay, Charlie? I smiled, resting my head against his shoulder. "More than okay," I said. "I'm happy. Really, truly happy." And for the first time, I felt like I had everything I'd ever wanted. I finally asked Tyler the question that had been on my mind for so long. Why keep working at the garage? Why live like this when you have billions? Tyler smiled and pulled me close. The garage keeps me grounded. It reminds me where I started. And this apartment, these months with you, they've been the happiest of my life. We made it work together, without any silver spoons or trust funds. Tears filled my eyes as I looked at him. "I love you, you sneaky billionaire." He laughed and kissed me. "And I love you, my runaway heiress." Life changed after that night, but not in the ways people might expect. We moved out of our tiny apartment, but only into a modest house we chose together. Nothing flashy, just a home where we could be ourselves. I joined Posey Innovations as the head of their charitable foundation, using the company's resources to help young entrepreneurs with big dreams but limited means. Tyler, despite his billions, still spends time at his first garage. He teaches mechanical skills to underprivileged youth, helping them build a future with their own hands. Watching him work, sharing his passion with others, makes me love him even more. As for my parents, they're trying. Mom still makes not-so-subtle hints about how grandchildren need trust funds, but Dad has come a long way. He's developed a real respect for Tyler, and their weekly business meetings often turn into long conversations about everything from classic cars to philosophy. It's not perfect, but it's progress. I've also come to understand what Tyler meant about life being too short to live it just on paper. Sometimes the best things come disguised as broken-down Ferraris and bad coffee from vending machines. Life isn't about plans or appearances. It's about the moments that make you feel alive. The best part? Every now and then, when we drive past our old apartment or pick up takeout from our favorite Thai place, Tyler still looks at me the same way he did when we first met. Back then, he was just a mechanic, and I was just a rebellious heiress running from a life that didn't feel like my own. Because in the end, love doesn't care about bank accounts or business empires. It doesn't measure success in dollars or status. Love is about who you are when everything else is stripped away. It's about finding someone who sees you, truly sees you, and loves you anyway. And that's us, Patricia and Tyler. A mechanic and a runaway heiress who found something far better than billions. We found each other,